Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 147. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. And Dave Bryan is back from his vacation out there in the Colorado region. So glad you're back, Dave. I was told there would be math, and so I'm going to leave, and you can do all the calculations, Dave.
Yeah, take your shoes off, take your socks off. There will be a little bit of math in today's podcast. Appreciate Ross and you guys filling in on the podcast while I was gone. I actually relaxed a little bit on this trip. Went to Denver, and my wife did a good job of stacking the itinerary. Took a lot of tours, got to see a lot of sights, got to go up into the Rockies, and even got to see a Pirates game on last Friday night against the Rockies, the one that they how many did they win that series? Just one? Or did they win two of them? I forget. But they won the Friday night game there. That was the game where Joe had the throw out at the plate early in that game. There several home runs in that game as well too. So fun little quick getaway, but it's time to get back after it again. And we got a few news items to discuss at the top of the show.
Yeah, we'll talk about certainly Denzel Mims and Trenton Thompson. I feel like you're Batman in the sense of whenever a running back signs a contract, the signal goes up in the air and you must return to talk about it. So we'll talk about Rhamondre Stevenson and Najee Harris and how all those things work together in just a little bit. But Dave, as you said, Pittsburgh making a couple of roster deletions, a little surprising here. And this summertime official start of summer here as Pittsburgh exited their mandatory minicamp last week. They have waived two players in the last couple of days since our most recent show, in wide receiver Denzel Mims and safety Trenton Thompson. Now, Mims has already found a new home, signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll see what happens on Thompson. Thompson was a surprising name. He was a guy that signed last camp, played well in the summer, came in last year on the practice squad, got called up with all the injuries, had a huge turning point interception against the Bengals. He's got size, got some ball skills. So don't know what happened there. Mims, was a second-round pick on the practice squad last year with the Jets and did not work out in New York before coming over to Pittsburgh in 2023. So not exactly heartbroken over that, but still wondering what the team's reason was and what their plan is going forward.
Yeah, really a surprise with both those guys. Technically, the Denzel Mims move was termed a contract termination, if you will, because of his amount of vested time there. The Trenton Thompson was a waiving, obviously. We waited until yesterday. I was waiting for the official transaction to hit the NFL sheet yesterday, and it finally did. I was wondering just maybe Trenton Thompson was waived as injured, but that was not the case with him. It's just a flat out waiving with him. As you mentioned, after Denzel Mims had his contract terminated, he signed on with the Jaguars. Almost makes you kind of wonder, maybe he went to the team and said, look,
I had that thought.
Maybe I'm starting to count the numbers in the room, something you shouldn't do, especially in that wide receiver room right now. And maybe he's just said, look, I'm not liking my chances here. And, can you do me a favor? Or maybe they just said, look, we want to give you a chance to catch on somewhere else, because it's probably not going to work out here. We'll never know the answer to that, but it was a bit surprising. I mean, it'd be one thing if some legal situation jumped up or something along those lines, but there was really no indication that the Mims move was going to come. And look, nobody dropped their cereal bowl or anything like that the morning that it happened. I don't think it was just, kind of a minor surprise overall. The Thompson, we've talked a little bit about him, this off season, kind of wondering maybe if he could make the roster as an extra safety. And as you mentioned, had that play last year against the Bengals, and could provide a little something on special teams. So interesting there. Obviously, was coming off of that neck/stinger injury last season. So it kind of does make you wonder, maybe where he was health-wise, but once again, he was not waived as injured. But those are the two moves that happened, since we last got together. And I think the roster now sits at 89. So 2 roster spots to be filled, and at some point they'll fill them before training camp, I think.
And to our knowledge, team has not signed anyone. You thought maybe could they sign some of the UFL guys, and that's still certainly a possibility, but none of the dozen or so UFL players, since that spring league has officially wrapped up last weekend. The Birmingham Stallions shutting out the San Antonio Brahmas to win it all there. Pittsburgh has not, to our knowledge, signed anyone for that league yet. Mims in itself, you're right, was not the shock, although I didn't even consider it until I got on Twitter and saw the reaction to it. People thought, they're releasing Denzel Mims. A wide receiver trade must be coming. Ayuk seems unhappy in San Francisco. He's saying the team doesn't want him back, which I don't believe, by the way, to be true. But people thought that was going to be the correlation. Obviously, no movement there. So I think we can, again, for now, quiet down the idea that Pittsburgh is on the verge of making a splash wide receiver trade.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of posturing going on over there with Ayuk in that situation. I don't for one second believe that they don't want him back. I think it's all about the getting the math to work, if you will. And look, as I wrote, we've talked about a few times already, the month of June is just not a month full of notable trades in the NFL, specifically the last 15 years. So could something happen, with the Steelers acquiring a wide receiver at some point between now and week 1 of the regular season? Yes. I think it's still somewhat plausible. Will it happen? Will such a move happen in the month of June? I'm kind of doubt that at this point. I think teams probably want to evaluate what all had happened at mandatory minicamp and make sure everybody gets through the rest of the summer unscathed and all like that. So once again, and talking about the Ayuk thing, we mentioned it 50 times already. It wouldn't be overly shocking if the Steelers traded for Ayuk, I don't think, especially with the recent, short history of Omar Khan and the aggressiveness. Where the real surprise would be if something like that happened, would be them turning around and making him either the highest paid player on the roster, or even really the second highest paid player on the roster. But it'd be easier for them to at least do it if he was the second highest paid player on the roster. But regardless, it would be very, very notable break from precedent if they went out and not so much traded for him, but turned around and made him the highest paid player. But we've talked enough about Ayuk, and really until something happens with a wide receiver, being acquired via a trade, we beat that horse up pretty well.
Yeah, I don't want to spend much time on it in today's show. With Thompson, there's probably not much really to say other than you are surprised. I thought he played well, could have been safety depth, was the guy that I thought could legitimately compete for one of those final defensive back spots. I mean, your safety room, yes, you had Minkah Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, Miles Killebrew, likely, almost certainly going to make this team as that core special teamer, captain, block punt specialist, and then Casey is that potential dime guy. So those are probably 4 safeties you would call ahead of Thompson as things stood, last week or so. But Thompson could have made it as that 5th safety, and if not, then at worst practice squad as he was to start last year, and then call up when injury struck. So really would love to know what happened there, especially if we believe, and there's no indication that injury played a factor based on the transaction sheet, the wire. If he was healthy, then he was just a clean cut. You got to wonder what happened.
Yeah, you really do, and I guess now we'll sit and watch and see if any team either A claims him off. That move went up yesterday, so he would be eligible to be claimed off waivers today being Friday. So we'll see if that happens, and if not, we'll see if he surfaces anywhere. But I think at this point you can close the book on him.
And if you were wondering why Dave said 89 players after two were released, that's because Pittsburgh was working off a 91-man roster previously, with Julius Welshoff, the rookie linebacker from Michigan, being an international exemption player. I know we've mentioned that a couple times before, but I always like to repeat that for anyone who might have missed it in the past or been wondering if it's a 90-man roster, you release two, how are they at 89? They're at 9. They can carry up to 91. They were at 91. Releasing Mims and Thompson down to 89. Any idea how they're going to fill those spots? And we're kind of just guessing. Do you think it'll be UFL? Do you have an idea what position it could be? Could they just go sign a receiver and safety and replace that 1-to-1, you think?
Well, I think, and I think I was out of town. I think when that first move happened with Mims, but I think you tweeted something along the lines, just kind of wondering maybe if they'll add a couple of specialists there. You know, they only have one long snapper on the roster right now, and Christian Kuntz. They generally don't they like to carry two, at least in the early portion of training camp, and then they obviously went out and signed Cameron Johnston, and he's expected to be the punter this season, but they in past years they've liked to carry two punters during the start of training camp. So I mean, for all we know, they might end up being two specialists being added.
Yeah, I was the Debbie Downer after Mims got cut. Everyone went, they're going to add a receiver. They're trading for Ayuk.
That's not as sexy, is it?
Yeah, to say, they might sign a punter. Maybe Brad Wing returns is not as sexy as trading for Ayuk. I think there was a year or two ago where they only kept Harvin for camp, only had one punter, but typically they have two to help save legs and not wear the starter out. So I think a punter makes sense. They've generally only been carrying one true long snapper the last handful of years. Used to be more, they would carry two. I think the last 3-4 seasons, it's kind of been just one, and they'll have, last year was Cole Holcomb. I think Derek Watt's done it in the past, just kind of practicing on the side as their quote unquote backup long snapper. But I could certainly see a punter. The other spot, could just be anything at this point, maybe a safety. I really want to see if they'll sign one of these UFL guys, but so far they have not signed the top names who have been contracts around the league so far.
All right, we sit and wait and see how they fill it.
Dave, one thing I want to go back to from Tuesday's show, Ross and I discussed it. The news feels probably a little old at this point, but I didn't get your take on it since you were away. But on Monday, the NFL announcing the NFL Films and HBO will have the first ever divisional Hard Knocks, and they are just so happening to pick the AFC North to follow the final 6 weeks of the regular season, plus any potential postseason runs for this division. So it's the first time the league is going to capture a division as opposed to a singular team. It's the first time Pittsburgh will ever be on Hard Knocks in any capacity. I'm sure they don't love it. How do you feel about getting to watch this behind the scenes look like never before of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I'll have the popcorn popped and I'll watch every episode of it.
You were a big Hard Knocks fan in general, right? You always tuned in, I think, at least the traditional training camp Hard Knocks.
Yeah. The training camp versions of Hard Knocks the last several years, in my opinion, are not as good as what they were in the earlier days. Now, I think, I think coaches have finally said, look, I mean, we don't need the cameras in there when I cut a player and all like that. But I mean, while it's fun for an outsider to see that, it is kind of a more of a private moment there. And I think coaches are getting smarter about, what gets released. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor that we'd love to see, but to me, Hard Knocks, in general, isn't as good as what it used to be. Now, when you look forward to this year and the end season, obviously it's not going to be training camp related to be well into the season, and you're covering 4 teams. How much are you going to be able to cram of each team of 4 AFC North teams in 1 hour segment? I assume it's 1 hour segment. So even though I'm sure there will be some interesting stuff related to the Steelers that makes it into some episodes. It's not like it's all tailored to be just Steelers specific. I would imagine, however, that it would, if you look at however many episodes in totality, I would be willing to bet that there will be a slight advantage to the Steelers because they are a draw, and the NFL and Hard Knocks is probably thrilled to have them on there. Overall, once again, I'll watch it. I bet the Steelers hate it, every aspect of it. I bet they'll be real picky about the things that make it past, make it to the actual broadcast. Mm-hmm. But it's the next best thing to having a training camp version of it. But with it being in season, especially later in the season, I kind of wonder about the quality of the stuff that actually gets shown on it, if you will.
Are you concerned about the idea of a distraction? This team may be impacted negatively by having these cameras in, especially for this end of year run where you figure Pittsburgh will be in the middle of a competitive race facing a bunch of AFC North foes, the way the NFL set this schedule up. Are you worried this could hurt the team?
No, not in general. I'd be more maybe concerned if it was a full training camp dedicated to the team, because once again, they're having to cover 4 teams. So no, overall, I'm not concerned about it. The biggest thing, and get your tinfoil hats ready. I'm sure you addressed this as well too. It's kind of weird now that the Steelers, heck, their first AFC North game isn't till week 11 against the Ravens, and then you have those 4 AFC. How many in a row is it? Three in a row AFC North games on the schedule in a row there later in the season. There, it is kind of curious how that magically set up to kind of coincide with Hard Knocks there, but at its core, especially with it being later in the season, the team's already going to be, the team at that point. And I'm not worried about it being a distraction. And at the very least, the 3 other AFC North teams have to go through it as well.
That's what Ross and I talked about. I think the way the NFL is probably trying to sell this to less than enthusiastic Pittsburgh is the whole division has to deal with whatever potential distraction there is. And I'm sure Tomlin will at some point inevitably make that comment when asked about, is this going to be a problem for the team? Yeah, Pittsburgh actually plays 4 straight AFC North games from week 11 to week 14. That's that rarity of it. And so 4 of the 6 games will be part of that NFL film schedule over the final 6 weeks. And so, to me, it's I know the NFL once said it was just an accident the way the schedule turned out the way it turned out for Pittsburgh, but I'll put the tinfoil hat on with you on this one here, Dave. So, I don't think it'll be a big distraction overall, but I'm sure for a team like Pittsburgh and for a group probably trying to lock in for those final couple of weeks, not exactly their favorite thing to have a bunch of camera crews in there. You watch more Hard Knocks than I do. There's not really a lot of like traditional interviews where a player or coach sits down. It's just really true documentary, fly on the wall type format, correct?
Now they'll obviously probably show some press conference and media sessions that we've already probably have covered at that point. But
it won't be like Tomlin sitting down in a chair and like specifically being interviewed. That doesn't take place in these Hard Knocks, correct?
Well, I don't think we have a large selection of the in-season stuff to go by. And to be honest with you, I pay less attention to the in-season Hard Knocks because we're covering the team and the daily stuff and all like that. I'm more in tune in the past with what has happened during the training camp episode. So it's hard not being a full connoisseur of the more recent in-season stuff.
In the camp ones, would they ever do an interview style like that? Do you remember?
I don't remember just flat out sit down, 3-minute segment stuff. They might have a quip here and there, but it's more just the cameras fly on the wall type situation.
Okay. And that should reduce the amount of distraction. And heck, half the time they just put the cameras up and they'll put them to the wall and there won't even be a camera crew there. It'll just be attached to a meeting room or an office or something like that. So we'll see. I'm excited for it to get that behind the scenes look. I'm more worried about just the actual schedule itself and how difficult it looks as opposed to the camera crews being there to capture it all. But hopefully Pittsburgh's in position to make that stretch run to even have that conversation. And I imagine they will be.
Right. And as you mentioned, the 4 games right in a row there, November 17th against Baltimore, Cleveland the following, about four days later against Cleveland, then Cincinnati, and then Cleveland again. So, yeah, magically lined up just perfect for NFL Films, didn't it?
And then your 2 non-AFC North games, Week 15 at Philadelphia. I imagine there's going to be a heavy Kenny Pickett angle in that episode that NFL Films will be targeting. And then Week 17, Christmas Day, the Wednesday game at home versus the Chiefs. So even your non-AFC North games still bring plenty of storylines for the show.
Right. I agree.
All right, Dave, let's just quickly touch on one piece of analysis, I guess you could say, from
real quick, that whole Patrick Queen and Marlon Humphrey back and forth, was comical this past week here. And it really got me back to thinking, man, I can't believe that our first Steelers Ravens game isn't until week 11. Are you kidding me? And then not only that, as we just mentioned there, it's the Steelers' first AFC North game of the season as well too. It's sad that you have to wait that long into the season, not only for the first Steelers Ravens game, but and beating the dead horse again. But not only that, but the first AFC North game isn't till after the bye week.
I do like playing Baltimore late in the season. That's actually happened most cases the last few years. I know last year, Week 5, that was the first game and then the finale. But I think in years before 2023, the last 2-3 seasons, they were playing Baltimore exclusively late in the year. I think those games really heighten up even more the later they are in the season. But Patrick Queen is having a lot of fun. And if he plays well, he's going to become the most popular man in Pittsburgh because he's already endearing himself well. But of course, he's got to back it up. If he does not play well, if he struggles out there, then all this fun Twitter trolling and chatter is going to get probably pushed back in his face.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I mean, I don't mind overall, I guess, that those 2 games against the Ravens are in the second half of the season. But come on, man, give us 1 or 2 AFC North games in that first half of the season.
Sure. No, I'm with you. I think it's crazy how the schedule is set up, but that is the schedule. All right, Dave, just to quickly mention Mike Greenberg. We don't talk about his analysis too often, but he had a pretty hot take yesterday on Get Up. He said that had Pittsburgh known how cheap Justin Fields would have been to acquire, they never would have signed Russell Wilson. I would disagree with the premise, and I imagine they kind of knew how cheap Fields was to begin with. I don't think that his price tag changed dramatically in the week from when they acquired Wilson to the week's end when they traded for Justin Fields. But what's your view of his hot take there?
Yeah, I think it's just that, and overall, I think it's really kind of silly there because Lord knows the Steelers had trouble accommodating that $1.21 million that they're paying Russell Wilson, right? Look, I mean, Omar Khan just said recently in that interview on 93.7. If you would ask me at the end of the season, something along the lines that these would have been our 3 quarterbacks. If you would have told me that, entering the offseason, he probably wouldn't have believed you. And I mean, I believe him. I mean, who would have known things would have went that they would have the way that they went there. I mean, I think the writing was obviously on the wall that Mitch Trubisky wasn't going to be back, and it was probably. They probably legitimately would have taken Mason Rudolph back at a cheaper price had he agreed to it. But as far as the rest, I mean, there was no way they were going to come off huge draft capital for Chicago. With Chicago in that trade for Justin Fields, they would, I would imagine they would have been interested either way, regardless of how things ultimately played out. But they weren't. It wasn't something I don't think they would have planned on there. And as far as obviously once, look, they had still imagined Kenny Pickett being in that room,
right?
Up, the days, the moment that they had signed Russell Wilson there, and Kenny Pickett basically in so many words, forced his way out of Pittsburgh at that point there. And then that, led to obviously the Justin Fields deal to follow there. So, Greenberg it was just something for a hot take for him there. And I think he says in that episode there, I believe if you gave the Steelers the truth serum, they'll never admit this, nor should they. Well, let's flip the tables here. Give Mike Greenberg the truth serum if he really believes his own words of his hot take there. And it was comical. And I think he's just running off at the mouth.
Yeah, no, you said it well, Dave. You made the critical point that Pittsburgh, when they signed Wilson, their full intent and belief was that Wilson and Kenny Pickett would be their top two quarterbacks going into training camp, and you'd have some sort of framing of a battle, although I think Wilson would have been the clear front runner, as he essentially is now. And then once Pickett wanted out and forced a trade, then that reopened the door for Fields, and they decided, okay, well, we weren't planning on Fields, but now we need another quarterback, so let's go ahead and get him because he is cheap. But again, I'm sure in their conversations, knowing how light and cool the market was for Fields in the past month, that his price tag to acquire him was not going to be that expensive. They knew that when they signed Wilson. It was a week earlier, and I'm sure circumstances did not change much when they actually made the move for Fields. So disagree with Greenberg there, but just a minor point. All right, Dave, the big thing, the math portion of the show that I know you're itching to talk about. Rhamondre Stevenson of the Patriots signing a long-term deal. What is it? 4 years, $36 million with a bunch of incentives included on top of that, $9 million per year average yearly value. Generally, Patriots signing somebody does not exactly have a reflection in Pittsburgh, but it's setting the market for Najee Harris on a potential long-term deal. So I'm going to turn the floor to you to dive in and talk about what this means and does not mean for Najee Harris and Steelers going forward.
All right, refresh my memory because I am old. Didn't we mention something about a potential Rhamondre Stevenson deal in that show before I left? Well, I think we recorded last Thursday night, and I believe it ran Friday, right? And didn't I say that I was going to write about the Najee Harris possible new contract would look for him on Friday, which I did have that post up on Friday there. So I think we touched on this a little bit ahead of it, talking about, kind of what the projections were out there for Rhamondre Stevenson and how we would be watching that, and how Rhamondre had said in an interview that he thought he was close and yada, yada. So now that the deal has been consummated with him and all, and shout out to Daniel Salib, because he was all over this, man. I mean, he was really spot on with his predictions on the contract and all like that. 4-year extension, supposedly $36 million, I think, base value of this, and it sounds like there can be upwards of an additional $3 million in those 4 years in incentives overall, which do not, I believe, start until 2025 there. So we know a little bit about the overall structure of this thing, an $8 million signing bonus for him. There are some reports out there of $17 million fully guaranteed for him. Let's wait and see what the actual ink on the contract says. I guess when you look at what they did with Christian Barrymore and the guaranteed money and the way they're doing contracts post Belichick right now, I don't think it's totally out of the question that indeed Rhamondre Stevenson got $17 million fully guaranteed. Obviously, $8 million of that signing bonus is included in that $17 million. So there's another $9 million out there. I would imagine is whatever the base salary they're giving him in 2024 will be fully guaranteed, and quite possibly whatever his base salary in 2025, it would make sense and the math would add up for that to be fully guaranteed there. So let's assume, it's dangerous to do. It comes from the old Bad News Bears that we talked about movie the other day. when you assume you wind up making, you stand a chance of making an ass out of you or me. You get it? Ass.
I'm with you. I'm picking it up.
All right. But let's assume the base value of this is correct. It's a $9 million new money average. Is what kind of Daniel Saliba thrown out there ahead of this deal. That makes sense when you look at the running back market overall. And I think moving forward from that, and look, I mean, we're not going to make this Patriots depot and focus in on Rhamondre Stevenson, but I think that overall that was a fair deal for Rhamondre. Now, moving forward on that and looking specifically at a potential extension for Najee Harris. And I wrote this up the other day. So this, my math plays well here. I think overall, first and foremost, in no way, shape, or form, in my opinion, should Najee Harris take less than a $9 million new money average if he were to sign an extension this offseason. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
All right. I mean, is there any pushback whatsoever? I mean, I know people listening to this will push back on it, but if you're looking at fair market value and you're looking at these two players 1-to-1 on my side of the fence, in no way, shape, or form should Najee take less than $9 million new money average.
Right, because it's the market. You have to play what the market is. And Stevenson, a very comparable player to Harris, same age, same draft class. Harris has outproduced Stevenson overall. It's been more durable than Stevenson. So if you want to debate who's slightly better, you can do that all day. I'll take Harris over Stevenson, but at the least, they are very comparable players.
All right, so this is what I wrote last Friday. So what if Stevenson ultimately slots in with a $9 million new money average? Man, I like when other people make me look smart like that.
When a plan comes together.
Yeah. Well, he would then become the NFL's 7th highest paid running back behind Joe Mixon at $9.875 million. And so for Harris to be able to top both Mixon and Stevenson, he would need to have a new money average greater than that of $9.875 million. Obviously, that would make him, Harris, the 6th highest paid running back in the NFL behind Josh Jacobs at $12 million. I think if Najee Harris is pushing to top Josh Jacobs at $12 million new money average. Now look, the obviously the incentives for Stevenson would make it right at $12 million, right?
Yeah, it's $12 million in additional incentives based on scrimmage yardage, and all pros and Pro Bowls are the incentives beginning in 2025.
Right, and he would have to hit every one of those yearly incentives to get to the 12 million mark. And let's just be blunt about it. The odds of that happening are slim, but at least that money's dangling out there for him to achieve. I think for Najee to push for 12 million is tough on his end at this point, especially when he is now technically officially facing a potential friend, even though, you can debate whether or not he would get it, all that. But if you want to look at negotiating tactics, he has his base salary coming up in 2024. He has the potential of a franchise tag next season. I think when you add all that together, I think it's a hard push for Najee to ask for and receive the $12 million new money average. I think more realistically at this point, the aim for Najee Harris should be to top the Joe Mixon new money average of $9.875 million. The contract that I laid out for him, and look, we know how the Steelers are, with incentives with non-quarterbacks, right? I mean, the likelihood, they're not saying they couldn't. It would set a new kind of precedent if they did, though. They generally like to stay away from incentive-laden contracts for non-quarterbacks. It's just the way they do business. I would be surprised if that changed with Najee Harris here. The other aspect that we talk about with contracts, especially non-top of the market for position contracts when it comes to the Steelers, is the guaranteed money. Let's assume that indeed Rhamondre Stevenson got $17 million fully guaranteed, which would technically make the first 2 years of the deal fully guaranteed. That's also going to be a tough push for Najee Harris when it comes to that. I foresee the Steelers trying to angle to have it be the first year money alone in 2024, meaning signing bonus and base salary, as far as that goes. Now, in lieu of not giving Najee those kind of guarantees that Stevenson supposedly got in his deal, the trade-off there might be the length of the contract. All right. That's why in my example, I have Najee Harris maybe with just a 2-year extension running through 2026, whereas Rhamondre's was a 4-year extension that ties him up through 2028. That's a plausible trade-off to Najee Harris. Say, look, we're not going to give you the guaranteed money, but you have a chance to maybe bite the apple one last time after the 2026 season. The way I have this thing drawn out for Najee Harris in my example would be $9 million signing bonus for him as part of a 2-year extension. Fully guaranteed money would be maybe the base salary and the signing bonus, which equate to $10.2 million overall. I have roster bonuses set up in 2025, 2026. No fully guaranteed money past 2024. Overall, essentially, the way I have this drawn out, it would, if you want to look technically, it'd be a 1-year, $10.2 million contract for Najee with 2 option years, so to speak there. Obviously, the Steelers would like him to play at least two the first 2 years, 2024, 2025 of this deal. And obviously, best case scenario is him playing all 3 of this. When you look at the new the total cash flow and the new cash flow overall as part of my example, I think Najee can come out ahead of Rhamondre overall, especially when it comes to new cash flow, because here's the thing that probably people don't realize when it comes to Rhamondre Stevenson. I believe he had the proven performance escalator that he had qualified for, and that caused his base salary this season to escalate to, what was it? Base salary in 2024 prior to the extension was $3.116 million. I told you there's going to be a lot of math in this show, Alex.
Mm-hmm. You weren't lying.
And that $3.116 million is what was technically more than Najee Harris is scheduled to earn in 2024 because of that proven performance escalator there. So technically, the new money for Rhamondre Stevenson was kind of impacted by the fact that his old money was 3.116 there. Basically, I think that you could do the deal the way I have it outlined with Najee Harris. It would equate to a new money average of Najee of a little more than 9.88 million, which would just barely top the 9.875 million new money average of Joe Mixon there. I think that's a fair offer for Najee Harris, if indeed it got that far. And I think that's one that Najee Harris should seriously consider taking if indeed it would be put in front of him there. I will tell you this right now. When you look at what Najee is scheduled to make as far as cash goes in 2024, his number is $2.439 million and some change there. When I show up at Latrobe, if I'm him and I don't have a new deal in place at this point, I'm not doing jack squat.
Sure.
And I cannot believe a lot we're talking about here with Najee is coming out of my mouth, because everybody knows my thoughts on running backs and fungibility of the position and all like that. All that said, I think Najee deserves a fair market deal at this point. And if I'm him, I'm going to be pretty upset if I don't get one prior to week 1 of the season at this point.
I get that. I mean, I think what you laid out is reasonable and fair and makes sense within the structure of the market and the Stevenson deal. The question is Pittsburgh willing to make that offer? I just come back to, if they're declining as they did the 5th-year option on Najee, which I know would have fully guaranteed it, but it would have been $6.79 million for his base salary in 2025. If they were unwilling to do that, why would they be willing to offer this kind of a caliber contract to Harris a couple months later? I
have talked about this with you already, my tinfoil hat opinion on, and we'll see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
I am believing more by the day that the reason they did not pick up that 5th-year option was so that they would have the ability to negotiate a long-term deal without ruining future precedent of, let's say they do wind up striking a deal this summer with Najee, not having a precedent out there of extending contracts of non-quarterbacks with 2 years remaining on their deal. Because had they picked up the 5th-year option, technically Najee would be under contract for 2024, 2025. And had they done that and then struck a long-term deal with him, they are setting themselves up for players moving forward who they pick up the 5th-year option on, of thinking, all right, it's time to do a deal because you did it with Najee.
So you think you're no longer in the camp of just kind of speculating? You think that's the actual reason why the option was declined?
Yes, I do.
Is there anything that's giving you more reason to believe that over the last couple of weeks? Because I think when you first framed that, it was like, yeah, maybe that's the reason why, but now you seem to be more confident in that. What's the reason for that belief becoming more strengthened?
I think when you take this all out of the box and look at it for all angles, and you take your Steelers fan hat off, but you put on the hat of having years of knowing what this team does historically and the precedents and all like that, has got me to this point right now where we are. Plus, look, do you believe Omar Khan had a good idea of the way the running back market was going to ultimately shape up to some degree, at least starting early on in free agency and the trades and Mixon and all like that? They had a pretty good idea of the way this market might shake out come the middle of June. Do you believe that?
Yes, I believe that they're aware of what the NFL, how the market looks. That's part of their job, is to understand market forces, what's upcoming, what could change the landscape. That's all part of the job.
And do you believe that they kind of knew ahead of time that even had they picked up the 2025 5th-year option on Najee, I mean, we're talking about 6.7. We're not talking about they knew that was pretty insignificant number overall, and really more of an insult more than anything. Not so much an insult, but just that wasn't going to probably be enough to keep Najee happy come this point of the offseason anyway.
Yeah, but it's about having some leverage and some team control. And because I know you mentioned franchise tag, but Dave, if they put the franchise tag on Harris next year, what a terrible look that's going to be for this franchise, to pay double what they could have paid had they just picked up the option on him.
Right, but having the threat of it and actually doing it are two different things.
Yeah, but I think that Harris's camp's going to easily call that bluff and say, please franchise tag us. Please, let's have everyone talk about how you just paid double what you could have paid for the guy a year ago.
And the Steelers are going to fire back that, look, he better stay healthy. He better have a fantastic season or he ain't going to see that franchise tag. So are you willing to risk it and go that route? Because the way the deal that I have as an example in my post is puts through 2 years through 2025, going off of the projected franchise tag for running backs next season, would put Najee slightly ahead as far as cash flow goes. If he stands pat with what he's scheduled to earn now in 2024, and if he were to receive the franchise tag in 2025. So like it or not, it's still a leverage tool, even though in your heart of hearts, you know that the Steelers are probably not going to get to the point where they would actually use the franchise tag on Najee.
Especially with an uncertain quarterback situation where you may need to deploy the tag or at least the threat of the tag for a Wilson or a Fields. So, yeah, that may be a leverage ploy, but that sword is not as sharp as it would be, I think, in normal situations.
Okay, I disagree. But and then there's the whole precedent thing, too, which I really think a lot of people are overlooking.
Yeah, you're the only person I've heard talk about it, but it feels like
excuse me.
No. But I'm just saying that to the point of it's being overlooked. No one else has really considered that angle of it, and that may be true. But it just feels like so many mental gymnastics because it's the option. It's not a traditional contract where there isn't the option in play there.
All right, but what? Okay, let's say Now let's say they picked up the 5th-year option.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then let's say they said, okay, we're tearing all of it up. We're giving you a new contract later this summer.
Yep.
What is the next guy that gets the 5th-year option going and his agent going to think?
Yeah, no, I get for the 5th-year option for the rookies, that will be precedent, but I don't think it opens this Pandora's box for any non-rookie 5th-year option eligible player. I don't think it's a smaller consequence than I think.
But once you rip the seal off of it, it's out there and it's open. And
but only for players. Gone. But only for players in that exact situation. Sure. It's the same way with the 2nd year fully guaranteed. The precedent broke, but it's only breaking for the true top market guys. For Watt and Fitzpatrick, it's not breaking for everybody on this team.
All right, let's take for example who's the next one.
Yeah, and who's even the next 5th-year option guy? Because it's not Pickett, obviously.
It's not Pickett at this point. So who was the first round?
Broderick Jones.
Right. So you get to the Broderick Jones situation, and let's say you decide to pick up his 5th-year option, which obviously isn't due until the following season. Going into his 4th season, him and his agent are going to go to the Steelers and say,
sure,
it's time to do a deal because you did it with Najee. And if we don't get one, I'm holding in. I might threaten hold out the whole season because damn it, I've played well these first 3 years. Look at the tackle market. It's time I get paid. And you did it for Najee.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, when would that even happen? 2026? What's the year on the 5th-year option having to be decided on Broderick Jones?
I mean, but why does that matter?
I'm just asking. I'm just tactily asking. It's right. the 2026 offseason that have to come up, right?
Let's see here. Hold on a minute.
3 years after Najee, 2021 to 2024. Jones should be 2023 to 2026.
Jones was drafted in 2023, so it would be after his first 3 years, 23, 24, 25. So we're talking about by May of 2026, and the 5th-year option would be for the 2027 season, correct?
Right, correct. Okay, so we're still. It's fair to say, why does it matter? I just say that to say that this is not an issue that's going to come up soon. It still would be an issue down the road. But secondarily, I would say, fine, that's a good problem to have. I would love to have to pick up 5th-year options and hit my first-round picks and pay them long-term deals because they're just playing so darn well. Like, I will take that problem all day long for a team that has been habitually declining fifth-year options on players season after season to the point where it's getting to be a disturbing pattern.
Sure. And look, there's nothing wrong with breaking precedent. But once you break precedent, you've broken precedent.
Sure. But this is a good situation. I would love for all my first round picks to hit. And then the come inside, I played so well. You've picked up my option and pay me because I deserve to be paid as a great tackle because I am a great tackle. What a wonderful problem for Pittsburgh to have.
Sure. But I mean, you understand at the core of the argument, not so much the argument, but the way I think that the Steelers might be looking at this.
I do. No, I certainly understand.
And I'm not saying that that's actually what
you believe that's the reason.
I believe it. You know, I'm not saying that that's the way it is. I sure would like to have a private conversation off the record with Omar.
Some truth serum, some of that Mike Greenberg truth serum we can borrow, hopefully.
You know, is there a level of plausibility to what I'm saying?
Yes. No, I think there is. But also maybe is it also Occam's razor of the simplest explanation is the correct one is they just don't believe either the position or Najee Harris is worth the money. That is
I
also
don't know
obviously
about
plausible.
No razors. I buy them cheap ones, but
what do you get? You don't go you don't get the Dollar Shave Club or anything?
No, I've thought about it, and I don't shave often enough for my wife.
You just have an old rusty blade.
Well, I have one of those lawnmowers. Man, what do they call them? What was one of those razors that we promoted that they sent us? I'm trying to.
I don't think we're gonna get that sponsorship again because I don't remember which one you're talking about.
Yeah, you do. Hold on just a minute here. What was that called? Manscaped. I got one of those Manscaped razors, and I like the fact that I can get in the shower with that and knock my beard down, and then what I do is I take one of those cheap triple head over the counter razors and finish it off that way. So
ooh, I don't know about all that.
I don't know how we went down the razor.
Occam's razor, because this goes back to the fungible thought. Maybe Pittsburgh just thinks in this new age of thinking that running backs are more fungible and they don't want to pay those guys, big money.
All right, quite possible, but let's go back to the market value overall as well too. What is a fair market value in 2020? Now, look, you're going to get people listening to this podcast right now, and I certainly get it. They're going to say, "Damn it, he signed his rookie contract. He should play for what the contract says." I get that pushback from a percentage of the fan base, but then there's also fair market value as well too. And once again, I cannot believe I'm standing up for a freaking running back here.
That vacation due to you, Dave. Where'd you go? When it was Aaron Rodgers and some mind-altering trip.
It wasn't that dark, but but look, I think Najee has done enough to this point, especially comparative to the guys that are in that top 7 now, which what do we say? Rhamondre is number 7th overall. I think Najee should be absolutely livid come the start of training camp and by the start of the regular season if he does not have a new deal. I think it is really insulting to him, and that they ask him to play for $2.439 million in 2024, and people throw your tomatoes at me. Get hot in the comments. I get it. Today's Friday. Today's spaghetti day. I'll put the tomatoes to use. But in my heart of hearts, I think the right thing to do with Najee Harris this offseason is to give him a fair market value deal, limit the guaranteed money on that, at least present the deal for him to turn down. And look, is his agent going to say, look at Rhamondre got $17 million fully guaranteed? The student's going to say, look, our policy on non-top of the market guaranteed money and first year money. We are willing to pay Najee over $10 million in 2024, we'll shorten the deal up because we're not giving him the guaranteed money. In other words, we won't tie him up as long as Rhamondre is. We're not going to put incentives in this thing. If Najee wants to run the risk of playing for $2.439 million in 2024, staying healthy, have a great season, and then maybe, just maybe, getting the franchise tag from us next year, because once again, we say when Najee leaves, have at it.
Sure, I get that. And to be clear, my stance is not that Najee should not hold in or seek out a long-term deal. He should. I always advocate for that. And I agree the market value is the market value, that he should not accept less than what Stevenson got on the average yearly basis standpoint. I'm with you totally. My view is, and my contention is, that Pittsburgh may not be willing to pay that if they weren't willing to even pick up the fifth-year option, which I know goes into the whole precedent discussion, but that's kind of the way that I'm coming in. It's not about does Najee deserve it. It's is Pittsburgh willing to pay it.
Now go ahead and hurt my feelings or whatever here. I want an honest, an honest answer. The way I have that deal laid out, and I spent a lot of time putting that together, and it is very plausible put together as far as new money, as far as cash flow, as far as guaranteed money and all like that. The way I have that deal laid out as is, would you offer that to Najee if you're the Steelers?
Would I offer that if I'm Omar Khan, would I offer that? I'm always hesitant to pay the running back. My goal would have been to pick up Najee's fifth-year option, have him play it out. If he, threw a fit, we had leverage. Pittsburgh would have had leverage there. I wonder how he would feel about the option years. I know Pittsburgh does that. That's not the roster bonuses, I should say, that to kind of create the option years. I wonder how Najee would feel about that. I would get the sense he wouldn't love that style, but that does give me as the team more flexibility. So to answer your question more directly, here's
the thing about those roster bonuses, though, is they actually, even though they're, you can call them what they are, whatever, option years or whatever, at least they're calendar triggers.
Sure.
That, okay, let's say you gave him the deal as I have it as is right now, and he earns the 10. You're giving him $10.2 million in 2024. Let's say that the Steelers say, man, this ain't, you missed 4 games. You didn't have the season. We're not going to pick up that roster bonus, so we're going to cut you in March. Okay. Mm-hmm. At least that gives Najee the jump on the market, and the ability to go find and earn more money, well before, right at the start of the new league year. Additionally, it puts, if the Steelers do pick it up, it ties him more to the Steelers at that point, and also it gives him more calendar year cash flow on top of it. So it can work in the player's favor to some degree.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand. And I made that point about Cam Hayward, that maybe roster bonuses could be a way to create a middle ground. I view it maybe a little bit differently. A player end of his career, just trying to get that contract. How do you get there versus a player with a bit more options and kind of in the prime of his career? I'm mixed, to be honest. I mean, I've seen so many teams hand those second contracts to running backs and it not work out well. I know the structure of this one is giving some more flexibility there, which makes me a little more open. Had those roster bonuses not been included in that projection, I would have said no. With them in there, I'm maybe more open to it. And I know this is all spilt milk, but if I was Pittsburgh, I would have picked up fifth-year option, play 5 years, find somebody else. After the 2025 season, your whole running back room would have been under control for 2024 and for 2025. That would have been my personal approach to it. I think paying those running backs, you do see some teams really regret decisions for teams that have done that.
Yes or no, Alex? Would you pick? Would you give?
Grilling me.
Would you at least offer the contract as I have it laid out to Najee Harris right now?
No.
Okay. I would.
How the turn have tables, whatever Michael Scott said. Yeah, I mean, we're on different sides there. But the question ultimately, though, is, will Pittsburgh offer an extension before week 1 when they go to Atlanta?
I think they will. I'm starting to think that they might actually get a deal done with him. I'm almost tipping over to the other side of thinking, you know what? If I was to bet on this, right now I'm right at that fence of where I'd say I probably wouldn't bet on it happening. Mm-hmm. I'd bet that they would offer him something along the lines that I have laid out. I don't know for sure if Najee would take it.
Yeah.
But I tell you, after seeing this, and once again, you know, I want to see what the ink dries on the Rhamondre deal to see, you know, if it's as advertised and all like that. I am close to think. Look, in the last week, well, that mile high air got to me, didn't it?
Yeah. You were up there.
I'll put it to you this way. I would not bet my house against, you know, a deal not happening for Najee this offseason. I think it's plausible. I think it's very plausible that one could still come together at this point. And if it does, I would expect it to come somewhere close to the way I have it laid out.
Yeah, I don't want to say there's no chance. I think there's always a chance. And Omar Khan has at least publicly said that they would like to keep Najee in Pittsburgh long term. He said that about other guys as well. And so I do take that with a bit of a grain of salt. You can drive yourself crazy and put yourself in pretzels thinking about what the national, or really not national, but some of the media reports are. When the news first broke on Najee, his option being declined, the theme was, the team wants to see how things look under Arthur Smith and play the season out. And I didn't really, I still don't really buy that, but that was the reporting at least. And I should assume that was probably team driven because it was like 3 different people had said that. And so I imagine that's coming, you know, from a team type of source there. So if that's the case, if that's going to be at least a rationale, that would suggest to me they're not going to extend him before the year if they truly want to see how this season works under Arthur Smith.
Look, I can see to some degree that side of the narrative, if you will. Look, we're all speculating here.
Sure, yeah, we're speculating on top of speculation on top of speculation. But if that is going to be their stance, whether that's a good reason or bad reason, if that is their stance and that was the reporting consistently, that would suggest they're going to play this year out and then potentially extend him after the season, but not before it.
All right, I'll leave it at this. If I'm Najee at this point, and if I don't have a new deal when I show up at Latrobe, I'm not even carrying my own damn pads.
But when do you show up? I mean, are we going to go Le'Veon Bell?
I show up because,
well, yeah, but
you know, I'm only here so I don't get fined.
Sure, but when do you actually say, okay, I'm putting the pads on if a deal is not going to come? If Pittsburgh hypothetically said, Najee, we're just not going to offer you a deal.
Week one. When okay. I show up at Atlanta.
Okay. Would you be concerned if you're Najee's camp if I'm going to be a little rusty to begin the year and maybe have a slow start to my season and a critical contract year?
No, I have faith that I'll take care of my own conditioning and I'll have myself ready to go.
Okay, that's fair. It's a new offense, though.
Sure.
Some new things to learn. He was at OTAs, which is still strange to me. He did participate in OTAs and then did not participate in minicamp.
Right. But I and look, I won't blame him. Here I go defending a running back again. But I would not blame him one bit if, you know what, this training camp, my hamstring's a little tight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think I can go today, coach. You know, I wouldn't blame him one bit if he conducts a newfangled hold in, if you will, come the start of training camp.
And I wouldn't either. I fully support a player's right to hold in and advocate for himself. And we may see a couple guys like that. Cam Hayward. What happens with Cam Hayward if a deal does not happen? It's going to be a very interesting, basically 4 weeks. We're a month away from them reporting to training camp.
Is there any other running back that might get a deal at this point? Trying to think who else out there. What did they do with
picked up his option.
Okay. He's another one that you might could see a deal because he's going to be interesting to see what the Jaguars do there with him, especially on the heels of Rhamondre. If I'm Travis Etienne, I've got my hand. I might consider some sort of hold in, at this point, saying, "Look, man, look at these other running backs. Look what I've done up until this point. I don't care that you picked up my 5th-year option. That doesn't really mean anything to me when it comes to next season, even though it's fully guaranteed."
Talk about comparables. Wasn't he the very next pick after Najee Harris? I want to say.
Now he obviously is on the books to his 2025 option. Actually came in at 5th-year option came at $6.143 million.
Yeah, I think because he had missed his rookie season with the injury, there weren't some of the, benchmarks to boost his option number.
Right. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy now in Jacksonville with his 2024 base salary. He's only scheduled over the next 2 seasons to earn not even $9 million right now. And I know the Jaguars say, well, just hold on. We'll take care of you next off season. But I mean, and I know that's fully guaranteed money next season for him, but that guy's got to have his hand out right now as well too. And what if if the Steelers are serious about at least attempting to get Najee done this offseason,
do it soon.
I would try to beat Travis Etienne to the altar.
Yeah, because Etienne's probably going to top Stevenson, which jacks up the price even more. And we'll see. I know that Jaguars just had to do Lawrence, but Lawrence is done, so their eyes could turn to Etienne now.
Right. And look, I mean, for all we know, that Etienne's young enough that maybe he could push the that 12 million number, or at the very least, we know he's going to want to top Mixon.
Yeah. What did he do last year? He was a workhorse last year. He played a ton of snaps for them. He rushed for 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3.8 yards per carry. Numbers down from his rookie year, but I don't know how much of that was the offensive line, whatever the case was. But he had, again, comparable season to Najee Harris.
And if they can help, and once again, if the intention is to give Najee a fair market deal, Steelers style, if you will, you'd have to think that they would want this done before training camp.
And that's been Omar Khan's MO when he can to do these deals in June. Not all of them. Deontay was in camp, and, sometimes you just have to work these things out. But again, a very interesting next month for Freiermuth, for Hayward, for Harris, anything with Justin Fields. I mean, there's going to be a lot to look for.
All right. And look, as I pointed out, from a market value, from a cash spending in 2024 perspective, and from a cap perspective in 2024, all the math lines up to get something done with Najee. Now, whether it maths enough on Pittsburgh's end is one thing, but it can be accommodated. What do you buy of the narrative at this point since yesterday that this Rhamondre Stevenson deal automatically 99.9% guarantees Najee Harris won't sign a deal this offseason?
I wouldn't go that far, but my expectation is that Najee Harris will not sign an extension before week 1. Will play this year out, and Pittsburgh will revisit things after 2024. And my current expectation, although I know his whole season can change that, so I'm a little less confident in it, is that Najee Harris will play this year out and sign somewhere else with another team in 2025.
All right. I'll leave it at this. This has been a long discussion. I know I've stepped on some listeners' toes. I'll get the pushback on here, not you. But don't be shocked if they strike a deal with him.
Let me ask you one last question on this topic. Besides the precedent idea, which I totally get, I do. Is there any other reason why this team would have declined the option, but still would have a desire to do a long-term deal? Is there something about the fully guaranteed aspect of the money next year? Or is it, as you said, the 5th-year option was kind of useless because Najee would have wanted a new deal anyway. So it was kind of the point of picking it up because it really wouldn't have satisfied Najee. And if you felt like he was going to truly, hold in and really demand a new deal, you kind of felt pointless to even exercise the option. Is there any other reason for why that option would have been declined?
The only other thing I can think of to some minor degree would be that it brings the threat of the franchise tag into play.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. If we hear anything before week 1, and again, we'll see what Harris's posture is in camp and go from there.
All right. So do you think he'll hold in?
That's a great question. We just haven't heard. I mean, we did hear from him yesterday. He spoke at an Alabama softball game, but wasn't asked anything about the Steelers. It was all Alabama related. I don't know what his mindset is. And they were very careful with him last year.
He's going to be hot if he's going to be fit.
But why did he work at OTAs? I don't get that.
Well, I mean, trying to make the effort to say, look, I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I'm trying to do my part here while we hammer this thing out.
But he could have just shown up and just not really worked. He could have effectively, because there was no obligation to even be there at OTA.
Sure,
he was there and he went through practice.
He views it as going above and beyond.
Yeah,
he's doing his part, and I think that was a wise decision on his part too.
Okay. Yeah, maybe so. I think also probably good for him to just get integrated in the offense, first couple practices with a new OC, so he's not totally behind the 8 ball and has some knowledge. Will he hold in? Yeah, I really don't know. I'm truly guessing at this point. I think regardless, I think his training camp will be very light, whether that's a true hold in or not. I think he will be doing minimal activity in camp.
All right. And you, once again, you don't think they should give him the deal that I laid out. I think they should, because essentially it's 1 year, $10.2 million for that. I think he's worth that. I'd be willing to take the risk, and because look, if you give him if it's a 2-year extension, and you give him a $9 million signing bonus as part of it, and you give him that $10.2 million total cash flow in 2024. Let's say it blows up in your face. He misses. He falls off the cliff in whatever aspect that looks like. You're out the $10.2 million, obviously, in cash, but there's only $6 million left in potential dead money. If you had to part ways, and people say, yeah, that's still $6 million, but the way the cap's supposed to escalate, that a $6 million dead money charge is really nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Sure. Let me ask you last thing. I promised the last thing. 2 questions. By the time July 24th rolls around, I'll say July 25th, first day of practice, will Najee Harris have a new contract?
Can I hedge or
no? No, you yelled at me for hedging. No, you can't hedge it. It's gotta be yes or no.
Real quick, do you know this team right now has on the books for 2024 $24.381 million and some change in dead money on the books?
Who's the largest? Who's most responsible for dead money on that?
Deontay Johnson has 5.833333 in dead money. The next highest would be Mitch Trubisky at 4.613 and some change. There, Chikwama Okorafor 3.083333. The next one down from that would be Patrick Peterson, 2.925 million dead
Mason
money.
Cole.
I forgot Kenny Pickett in here. 3.705 million in dead money on Kenny Pickett this year.
Okay, it adds up for sure. All right, yes or no? July 25th, Najee Harris, does he have a new contract in hand, regardless of structure? New contract.
All right, I'm going to treat this as my life is in jeopardy.
Oh my God.
By the time, I'm going
to ask 2 questions.
No, because I mean, give me 2 weeks into training camp.
All right, 2 weeks into training. Well, my question was going to be: A, does he have it by the start of training camp, and then B, does he have it by the start of week 1? Was going to be my 2 ways of framing this question to you.
All right, if you give me 2 weeks into training camp, I'm going to say yes, he has a deal in place.
Okay, but by July 25th, I'm assuming you're saying he won't have a contract before camp actually begins.
A little less likely, maybe.
Okay, I'm going to say
now.
No
Look,
to all of the above.
Do I have conviction here? No, because obviously most of this offseason, my advice has been don't bet on it happening.
Sure. But by week one,
knowing the way the Steelers do deals complicates things because especially the guaranteed money aspect of it and all, that complicates things, I think, to some degree here. So I don't have a lot of conviction. Look, I'm not going to be floored if he does not have a deal in place come week one of the season. I think
yeah, you could see it either way, right?
Right. But I mean, if you're asking me for a prediction, especially on the heels of this Rhamondre deal and all like that, I'll take the other side. I'll say, 2 weeks into training camp, he has a new deal in place.
Okay, but by week one, by the start of the season, the team self-imposed deadline, you think he will have a new deal? Yeah.
I mean, once again, my conviction level is not there, but
I understand.
If I'm forced to pick a side, I'll say yeah.
So you think
it makes too much sense, man, to me.
You think the Stevenson deal helps facilitate a Harris extension? You think it actually helps move the ball closer?
Only because maybe the ink's dry on it. Because I bet the Steelers foresaw that coming with the market.
Sure.
Because look, though, we're over here playing checkers. They're over there playing chess. You know?
I'm playing Connect Four over here.
You know, they're over there. They've got a grasp of what the running back market looks like. You know, they're not at home in mom's basement, you know, with an Excel spreadsheet tallying this stuff up like I do, you know. But I'll put it to you this way. I don't think it's fair to ask him to play for what they're asking him to play for this year. And I'll get a lot of pushback on that because, he signed the contract and, Najee's all that. Look, you're talking to Mr. Running backs are fungible here.
Sure.
You know. But I think he's deserving of more money.
Yeah, it's to me, it's not a question of deserving. It's a question of getting what you want, and what you deserve is not always. Is it McJagger that said you can't always get what you want?
Yeah.
And so that's where I wonder where the rubber meets the road.
I think at the very least they should offer him a fair market value Steelers-like deal.
Okay. All right. We will see. We will talk about it. We'll certainly be watching it. And if a deal does not happen by July 25th, then we'll have to see what Harris's posture and stance and attitude is during training camp.
All right. I can't imagine what kind of comments we're going to get from that.
It should be fun. All right, Dave. To round things out, a little later note here, it's truly close to training camp when I see the Dave Bryan 90 and 30 series, which began on Thursday, I think it was. And so we'll go through these names here quickly and do it as always alphabetically, starting with Montravius Adams, Kyle Allen, and Spencer Anderson. So give me your overview of those three players.
Yeah, look, I think the way this defensive, we'll start with Montravius Adams. I think, they signed him to a new 2-year deal during the offseason there. He obviously missed a little bit of time last season there. It's a cheap deal overall. It's one of those deals where, even though you're not heavily vested in him, it does seem like it's enough that, barring something really surprising happening, he'll be on the roster in 2024. I think ideally you want him to not have to play as many snaps as he did in 2023. Obviously, that had to happen because of the situation with Cameron Hayward and Keanu Benton being a rookie and all like that. I think the way the roster sits right now, he's at least adequate to provide you some backup snaps on there, especially at what they signed him, 2-year, $5.25 million deal. So sitting here this early out, I expect him to make the 53-man roster as a backup, and hopefully he won't have to play the amount of snaps he played in 2023.
Right. He should not, because he will be the backup as he was after coming back from his injury late last season. Benton should be the starter. Adams, good athlete, penetrator, quick guy, really hot motor. But I just, run defenders average, and the pass rush has not met the athleticism, the metrics in our pass rush pressure rates and those things that we chart. He's always kind of underwhelmed in that regard, but a fine backup nose tackle.
All right, Kyle Allen, kind of. This is not much to say here. You would expect him to be the number 3 quarterback for the Steelers in 2024. Barring obviously injuries or whatnot ahead of him. I think best case scenario is you never see him on the field.
Amen to that, but I do appreciate Pittsburgh's stance of having a very experienced quarterback room. The one commonality, despite all the differences and complete overhaul of the quarterback room, is last year they had 3 experienced starters in Rudolph and Pickett and Trubisky, and they have the same this year in Wilson, Fields, and Allen, who, again, you don't want to see him start, but he started a bunch of games, and that's good to have as a number 3 quarterback.
Yeah, look, we saw what happened last year. 3 quarterbacks had to play, right? You never know when you're going to have to be in that situation. At the very least, you got a super cheap guy that's got some playing time and starting experience when it comes to that. So you could do worse overall. Let's hope we never get to that worse situation.
For sure. And then Spencer Anderson, we had this discussion last week. Is it a good or bad thing he's exclusively a guard? I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, the interesting situation with him, especially on the heels of the Steelers drafting 3 offensive linemen this year, Troy Fautano, Zach Frazier, and Mason McCormick, all 3 of which should make the 53-man roster. Obviously, you got a guy like Anderson that, albeit he was on the 53-man roster last year, he spent half of that rookie season on the inactive list. He did dress for 9 total games last season. He only logged 1 offensive snap, and I believe that was as an extra tight end. Yeah, he's got the position flexibility, yada, yada, but we haven't seen that really outside of preseason just yet in training camp. And if it sounds like so far this summer he's being asked to work mainly as a guard, and if that continues on into training camp, to me that kind of hurts him a little bit there, because you want the opportunity to show I'm this flexible guy, and maybe they saw enough of that last year. I don't know, but I think when you look at this depth chart as is, and if you were to assume no injuries happen, which is dangerous to do, to me it kind of feels heading into the training camp this year that he's on the outside looking in as far as the roster bubble goes, and needs something to happen to make the 53-man roster. I think realistically, you're looking at maybe a practice squad guy in 2024.
Yeah, as you said, drafting 3 offensive linemen is going to squeeze some of those guys. Anderson might be getting the squeeze. And this one true offensive snap last year, really one offensive snap, was that weird kneel down, I think against Baltimore week 5, where they tried to center the ball and everything just got super strange for a second. So has not really had an actual snap of having to go block somebody. But yeah, we'll see if he gets more versatile. I mean, if injuries happen in camp, and you're going to have to shift some of these guys around, so maybe that just inevitably naturally creates some flexibility, even if that's not the team's intent right now. But I think right now he's that number 10 offensive lineman for a team that may carry only 9.
All right. The 3 that I wrote up this morning in the 90 for 30 series, which, by the way, this will probably end up being more than 90 and more than 30.
Yeah, we're at 89 right now, so it's a lot of shifting.
Yeah, probably end up being like 94 players in 32 days or something like that. Yeah. But 90 and 30 sounds so much sexier, right? All right. Graylin Arnold, obviously, fairly new to the roster, signed in early June. Had to acclimate himself quickly. You got an undersized player here at 5'9" and 1/8. You got a guy that, what is he? Is he a safety? If there's anything in his favor, I think as far as his NFL history to date, is the fact that he's used to playing on special teams at the NFL level. I think that's a little bit of a plus for him going into training camp. But make no mistake about it, this is a guy that's going to enter training camp regardless of where they see his position flexibility, where they put him on the field, which at his size is probably going to be more slot than anything else, you would think, or at least down low in the box if he's a safety. He's a long shot to make the roster. I think a lot would have to happen for him to make the 53-man roster. Once again, to his credit, he's got some special teams experience, and he would obviously need that if he wants any chance to make it a roster. I view him battling for a practice squad spot.
I'll be slightly more optimistic about his chances. He's listed as a DB. Reports called him a safety when he first signed, but he played mostly slot corner last year for Houston. The Steelers had tried to sign him during the 2023 season, and Arnold decided to stay with Houston. If Cam Sutton is suspended to start the year, and knowing how wide open this slot corner battle is, I mean, he'll be in the mix. Does he have great odds to make it? No. But if it's not Sutton, then it's completely wide open for who this team's slot corner is going to be. And Arnold does have experience, which will help him out to a degree.
All right, next name on the list, Calvin Austin III. Obviously missed his rookie season in 2022, foot injury, came back and at least got on the field, a fair amount in 2023. Even so, he only managed to register 18 total receptions for 187 yards. Obviously had some rushing attempts in there, a punt returner to his credit and all like that. Only 171 of his offensive snaps came in the slot last year, however, as he's mostly used as an outside receiver. Look, I think everybody expects Calvin Austin III to make the roster this season. We still need to learn more about what he can and can't do. I think the reports out of OTAs and mandatory minicamp have been favorable as far as his route running development. That's good to hear. I don't envision a huge uptick in slot snaps for him. I don't envision a huge number of snaps for him if the Steelers get into a high volume amount of where they're only having two wide receivers on the field. All that said, you would hope that regardless of the amount of playing time that he does end up getting in 2024, that he'll be easily able to increase his output statistically as a wide receiver. I think you can look more along the lines, maybe 30 receptions, something along those lines. Obviously, his calling card at Memphis was the percentage of explosive plays. Boy, this Steelers offense could use whatever that looks like an increase for him in 2024 there. I think obviously he'll compete, in return capacities again. Long way of saying the summation of him should be expect him to take a step forward in 2024. To what degree that improvement looks like, I think is yet to be seen.
Yeah, got to see if he can make the team. He's in that mix right now. A lot of positive things being said about him by teammates and by wide receivers coach Zach Azzani during spring ball, which is positive to hear. But I want to see him be able to do it when the pads come on in the summer. Can he make more plays underneath? He's got the ability maybe to, but I don't know if he has the greatest quicks in the world that some of the smaller guys do. To a degree, obviously he's shifty, but not maybe like some other receivers that I've seen of his stature. Can he improve his catch radius? I know it's never going to be tremendous, but he just really struggles to catch anything outside of his frame. That's going to be key for him. And can he just make some plays during training camp consistently with the whole route tree to separate himself from the other receivers in this room? That'll be his ticket to making this 53-man roster.
All right, last player we'll talk about today is new cornerback Anthony Everett. Obviously, he signed to the offseason roster after he went through the annual rookie minicamp as a veteran tryout player, former fourth-round draft pick of the Ravens out of Alabama. Spent time on the practice squad of the Lions last year. He failed to play any snaps for them in 2023. He did play sparingly on defense for the Raiders in 2022, but failed to log any special team snaps with them in that limited time. I think he's played in 51 regular season games with 27 starts. While he has played in the slot some in the NFL, most of his defensive snaps has come as an outside cornerback. The fact that he failed to play any snaps last season, I think, tells you a lot about where he is now in his NFL career. He's never really been regarded as a strong special teams contributor, per my research. It'd be interesting to see how much the Steelers test his position flexibility in training camp. How much slot time will he get as opposed to outside work? They'll also really want to see what he can do on special teams. This is a guy that'll turn 30 in November, probably his last shot at making an NFL roster. To me, Alex, I think he's got a very tough path ahead of him. and thus probably a long shot to make the 53-man roster. I think if he stays under contract throughout the rest of the summer, his best bet at sticking in Pittsburgh might be as a veteran practice squad player.
Yeah, I mean, he does have the benefit of being a veteran backup outside corner compared to some of the young guys they'll be competing with, and Corey Trice and Darius Rush, but who can play well on special teams, who can play consistently at corner, and who can, capture one of those gunner spots. I don't know if Avertt's going to be the favorite for that, but he does have at least the experience factor as a potential small leg up on guys like Trice and Rush and the rest.
All right. Let's see. Will Braylon Arnold or Anthony Everett make the 53-man roster? I would bet against that right now, and I would obviously bet that Calvin Austin does.
Yeah, I think on my way too early roster prediction, I had Austin on and Arnold, who I don't think was even a Steeler at that point. Not even sure if Averett was at that point either, off. Probably would leave them off right now. But again, those backup cornerback spots, the slot corner battle is pretty wide open.
All right, we'll start as I start posting these. A new post will come out every day in the 90 and 30 series, doing 3 players at a time. By the time Monday or Tuesday, or we're doing 2. We'll see how it goes. But I think the plan is to do 2 podcasts next week, Tuesday and Friday.
Yeah, Tuesday, Friday till camp, unless any major urgent news comes up, we'll jump on right away.
All right, we'll talk about a slew of other players ahead of training camp in the Tuesday show next.
Yeah, every morning, 7:15 a.m. Eastern time. That's when Dave's articles will go up. So set your alarms.
All right.
All right, Dave, any reader emails to close out today's show? I'm sure we probably have a couple since we have not done reader emails in a little bit.
All right. Justin writes in, hey, Dave and Alex, fun question on a slow Monday. He sent this in on Monday. With the possibility of Cam Hayward's future retirement becoming a little hairy like Troy Polamalu's forced retirement, tarnish your name by ending your career with the Titans or retire, I ask you guys to put on your Steelers GM hats on. How would you guys deal with an aged cornerstone franchise player that is declining play but is above being paid the vet minimum? I know the NFL is a business, but is there a nicer solution that is both fair to the beloved player and the organization? Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. I'm still expecting a no new money in 2024 extension for Cameron Hayward. If you want to talk more with more modest base salaries in 2025 and 2026, obviously no guaranteed money past 2024. If you want to be a little bit more favorable, maybe you throw an extra $2 million or so at him in 2024, and that be his additional new money. But you got to be careful here because of the age of the player. And you also have to be careful because he is the cornerstone of the franchise on defense. You don't want to hurt his feelings too bad here, but this is a business overall. I think Cam Hayward understands this. I think really the perfect solution is it's a no new money in 2024, 2-year extension with some roster bonuses built in 2025 and 2026, and you go about your business that way.
Yeah, that makes the most amount of sense for me. I think that's the way this thing will probably go, but I'm not going to guarantee it because I don't know exactly what Pittsburgh's stance is. It's a pretty unique situation without too many comparables in franchise history. Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, ultimately, you got to do what's best for the team, best for the franchise. That comes first and foremost. That's how you have to approach any situation, even with a revered and cherished player like Cam Hayward. But I think Dave's outline is the way to go.
All right. Harry Spencer wrote in about a week ago, Tomlin's worst mistake. He says, easy. He says, I believe these are Tomlin's biggest mistakes, at least in recent history. First, Ben should have retired after he blew out his elbow in 2019. He was never the same. Cam and TJ and Minka would have been 5 years younger at the start of a rebuild. At the end of that season, we knew what we had with Mason and Duck. We needed a new quarterback. Second, bad choice.
I'm not sure that's a Tomlin mistake, but
yeah.
Okay, go on.
I agree. I mean, I guess you could have put it on Tomlin to maybe try to twist that elbow.
yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Second, bad choice with Matt Canada. Third, Kevin Colbert should have never been allowed to draft the class of 2022. What a bust with Kenny and DeMarvin Leal. Also, I thought that must have been a slap in the face of Omar Khan. He's a Steelers fan since they hired Chuck Noll. Love the Tomlin extension. Keep up the great work. Are these all Tomlin? Yeah, I think, how many of these are Tomlin's mistakes, though?
I understand the point of saying Tomlin could have strong-armed and said, Colbert, you got to go. Ben, you got to go. Everyone get out of here. You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here kind of thing. But when I view Tomlin mistakes, I think of more like directly a decision he, one-to-one had sole control over and made. And I'm going to assume that he basically had control over being able to promote Matt Canada and decided whether or not to keep him for the 2023 season. So, yeah, if you want to really stretch it, you could sit there and blame Tomlin for that. But I wouldn't put things like Colbert staying, Ben not retiring as true Tomlin mistakes because I don't think he had direct control over dictating some of those things.
All right, Mike Brennan writes in 2 terrible questions for the terrible podcast. He says he listens on Spotify. Let's see. I've always been a Steelers fan. Living in Australia and UK makes me very late to the game. My knowledge has really improved by listening to your show and website. One day I'll get to see them play in Pittsburgh. He says, I have seen the Packers and Giants in London. Question 1, has Dave ever done a terrible take? If not, he should do one or something must be on his mind. I have. I did terrible takes quite frequently before we started getting Ross and Joe and several other Melanie to get involved there. So I've done it before, and I'm not opposed if I got something on my mind to slide one in there if someone needs a day off and all like that. So you probably have not ever heard my last terrible take. Let's see, stats about injuries. He says, he says he would like to hear me maybe talk about on a terrible take. Wondered why so many in the defensive linebacker injuries last year, and if it would be fewer this year, assuming measurable improvements in the offense this season. Is it reasonable to say the defense will spend less time on the field than last season? Obviously you would hope to see a more ball controlled offense in 2024. You'd like to see the defense get off the field a little bit more frequently than they did last season. I mean, it's hard to speculate on how that will play out. I think it's reasonable to hope that the defense will spend less time on the field than last season.
Yeah, I think so. I think the last year they were on the field a ton to begin the year. Things kind of evened out as Pittsburgh played better ball control and ran the ball well in the second half of the season. So things kind of normalized. But yeah, if you have a good ground control, run the clock, stay on schedule type of offense like Pittsburgh is trying to build, then yes, hopefully your defense is out there a lot fewer snaps in 2024.
He goes on to write as part of the second question here, assuming the defense spends less time on the field, will that reduce the injuries on the defensive side? Well, I wish I had that. Wish I had a good answer to that. Obviously you're playing less snaps. You would think the chances, if you diminished the amount of plays, hopefully that would maybe result in less injuries. But I think you got a level of randomness and and stuff in there. And I mean, things happen, man. I mean, we saw it with this linebacking crew last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, even if your snaps go from 67 per game to 60 per game, it's a reduction.
In 2 plays, you can lose 3 players,
Yeah, and that happened, last year, wasn't it? There was not an injury, but it was Casey ejected for the hit on Pittman. And then I think the very next play, Minka went down after colliding with Patrick Peterson, I think it was. And so stuff like that can happen. The reduction helped. Yeah, the numbers, fewer snaps you play, it doesn't hurt figuratively to maybe not have as many injuries, but they're freaky, they're random, and really that's not going to be a big factor. Maybe the new conditioning coaches can help with that to some degree, from soft tissue type of injuries. Also, I meant to say last week, who probably is the happiest about Cole Holcomb being on a really good track right now to hopefully play week 1?
Who's that?
I bet you it's Keanu Neal, because he's the guy that collided with Holcomb on that injury last year, which was just freak and terrible. But I imagine that stuck with Neal to injure his teammate, accidentally, of course, but so severely. So I'm sure, of course, Neal no longer a Steeler, but he's probably happy that Holcomb is doing pretty well.
All right, got one from Greg here. It says, great show. A non-player related question. I've been seeing Steeler marketing lately that has the colors listed as black and yellow, not black and gold. Has it always been black and yellow and everyone says black and gold? The Here We Go song, for example, cheer the Steelers, the black and the gold, he says. And he's got an attachment here of a T-shirt from the Steelers Pro Shop and a shirt that has black and yellow printed on it. Interesting. Look, I mean, we all know them as the black and gold, right? And I think the way the whole black and yellow kind of got inserted in this was a whole Wiz Khalifa song.
You're our expert on Wiz Khalifa, Dave. So yeah. Take it away.
Yes, I am not. I can only imagine that a lot of the younger maybe fan base were kind of introduced to that, and that song somewhat kind of got adopted a little bit into the Steelers, and maybe that's playing into it, and maybe the marketing's trying to at least capitalize a little bit on the younger fan base singing black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I don't know. That's above my pay grade. Look, you will offend a large selection of the Steeler fan base if you refer to this team in any way, shape, and form as the black and yellow.
Yeah, no, you gave my answer perfectly, Dave. I think black and yellow probably came a lot from the Wiz Khalifa song. All I know is that if I reference their colors, I say black and gold. Otherwise, I'll be stoned to death if I say black and yellow. So
boy, if you tweet that out, black and yellow, you will get tomatoes thrown at you big time. Yeah. Frank Walker writes in, good morning, Dave and Alex. That shows. Let's see. I've been listening to the podcast. Alex, you were doing a great job. My question
Thank you.
Is it seems that Mike T is getting all the blame for not winning a playoff game in several years, but no one is saying anything about the GM, Kevin Colbert. He was also should be given some of that blame for this. Shouldn't Kevin Colbert be given some of the blame for the Steelers' play or lack thereof for the last several years? Thank you. Yeah, look, I mean, you talk about no playoff wins since 2016. That doesn't go squarely just on Mike Tomlin. There's a lot of layers to that onion. I think general manager, ownership. I think no. The short answer to your question, Frank Walker, is that no, not all of the blame goes on Mike T for this team not winning a playoff game since 2016.
Yeah, I don't want to put sole blame on him, but he's the head coach and he's the most visible, obviously, non-player of this franchise, and really many ways to face the franchise overall in this new era with so many players departing. So he's going to get much of that blame. But listen, I've said it many times. I'm a huge Kevin Colbert fan. I think people have had too negative of a view of his overall tenure as Steelers GM and director of football operations before becoming officially the GM in 2010, winning 2 Super Bowls, building a consistent, stable winner. No one should forget that. But I think his greatest mistake was, as kind of referenced earlier from an email, was staying through the 2022 NFL draft, knowing he was going to step down that year. We're not going to see the 2022 season. He should have stepped down January of 2022, allowed a traditional GM process, and for somebody, a new GM, or in this case, Omar Khan, to build out his roster from the get-go. I think that was a mistake, and I think you've seen Omar Khan have to undo some of those mistakes of that class of Kenny Pickett and Leals in bust territory, some of the free agent moves, etc. So I think that was probably well-intentioned by Kevin Colbert to try to have a better succession plan and give the new GM a quarterback. But I think that was his biggest mistake of his entire career.
All right. Richard Jameson writes in a recent terrible take, Alex Kozora discussed a pending $21 billion lawsuit against the NFL. If that lawsuit is successful, would that mean that there would be less money available for player salaries? Could we have a decrease in the cap like we did during the COVID-19 lockdown? That is a great question, and I'm not even going to pretend that I have a great answer for it. I will say this about that, and I have not researched. Alex probably knows more about that lawsuit than I know the generalization of it and all like that. whatever happens with this lawsuit is going to be caught up in court for a long time. I would think there would be appeals and this arbitration and whatever, as far as however the court system and all plays out. I don't know. I would think that the league would do everything imaginable not to decrease the cap, if at all possible. That would be my initial answer to that. Short answer is I don't know, and I'm not afraid to say that. I'll tell you this, Richard. I don't know if you're on Twitter. Why don't you hit up Joel Corey on Twitter and pose that question? Might take a couple of times to get an answer, but why don't you pose that to him?
Yeah, I don't have a definitive answer either. My answer was going to be what you mentioned. There will be appeals. Even if the NFL loses, they were going to appeal this thing forever and ever. So it's not like they lose and the verdict comes in, they got to pay that money the next day. Certainly that's not going to happen. They're going to fight every way to try to avoid that. And that's the max $21 billion. I think the damages were like $7 billion. And I guess for antitrust or whatever the court situation is, that they could triple up to $21 billion. This all comes from the Sunday Ticket lawsuit about the league being accused of violating antitrust laws and basically monopolizing this premium expensive product that is Sunday Ticket. That's the background on it. The trial's ongoing right now. It should wrap up here pretty soon. My guess is it's not going to impact the salary cap. You're not going to feel those effects. The NFL will figure something out. Really, the ramification would be if they were to lose this case, would Sunday Ticket change, and would they potentially offer different packages and per team options and those types of things? That's probably going to be the only visible impact that you and I might feel if the NFL loses this lawsuit. In addition to maybe if you sign up for Sunday Ticket 10 years ago, you might get a $35 check or something like that. That's part of the payment, but it's not going to impact the cap.
The only thing I will speak with positivity on this, as the great Andrew Brandt says on Twitter, there will be lawyers.
Yes. And if Joel doesn't get around, I'd be curious to get Andrew's thoughts on that.
Yeah. Tweet. Richard Jameson, tweet Andrew Brandt on Twitter as well too. He likes to have back and forths with people, so that would be a good question to pose to him as well too. I don't think this is going to be something we're going to have to worry about for some time.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to impact the cap, but to your point, and I'm sure what Andrew would say is there will be lawyers, there will be appeals, and this thing is not going to be decided even with the verdict that comes in next couple of weeks.
All right, was I rusty today, Alex?
No, I think you were on top of it. You came in, I think, guns a-blazing, so I had a fun time.
All right. Hopefully everybody somewhat enjoyed portions of the show. I imagine we're going to get a lot of comments and what have you from this. If you'd like to send an email, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Twitter/X. Do you still call it Twitter or do you call it X? Do you ever call it X?
I never call it X. I've been now referring in articles now that they've officially changed it to X.com as Twitter/X, but there's still so much Twitter branding on there that they should just change it back to Twitter. But
I only say Twitter/X because I think that's what a lot of people are trying to do. It'll always be Twitter to me. But regardless, if you want to follow us on that platform at Steelers Depot, follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, you know what? Real quick, let's ask the people real quick and have them chime in over this long weekend here via email, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Do you think Najee Harris signs an extension before week 1 of the 2024 regular season? You can be yes, no. You can tell me why. You can tell Dave's crazy. Get Dave off of there, whatever. But interested in feedback on the Najee Harris predictions as far as a contract extension goes. theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. Until Tuesday. You ever listen to the Till Tuesday, the band Till Tuesday?
Never even heard of it.
Oh boy, you got to Voices Carry was a song that they had that was popular back in, I think, late 80s, early 90s there. Anyway, until Tuesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.